Welcome back to another episode of Life's Ambition podcast. Today we are joined by someone with a wide range of knowledge in the accounting world. He's going to give his input on becoming a partner and the tax world as a whole. Without further ado, Scott Zeligson. So Scott, how are we doing, man?
Doing well, Drew. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just another sunny day, so I cannot complain. Still 100 degrees in North Carolina, so slowly working our way out of it. We might get an 80-degree day here soon, so woohoo, exciting.
That sounds good. Actually, it is in the 80s here right now, which it was not yesterday, so I'm enjoying the break in the heat. So yeah.
There you go. There you
Yep.
go. I think I'm very excited for this conversation. I've been really looking forward to it. And, even before we hopped on the recording here, we talked a little bit about the different aspects of the accounting world in terms of like public versus like working for a private entity. And I just kind of love to know how you got exposed to it.
Sure. So when I started out in college at the University of Kansas, I took Accounting 101 and Accounting 102. Accounting 101 was financial. Accounting 102 was something called management. And I did not do well in those classes. I didn't understand them. And I think those introductory classes did exactly what they're designed to do, was to figure out if you really enjoyed or liked accounting. So I ended up, graduating with a degree in business and marketing. I went to go work for a bank. And then 2 months or so before Lauren and I got married, I got laid off because the bank was going to be purchased by a bigger bank. Funny thing about that is they told us, up and down that they would never be purchased. And here we are. So blessing in disguise. So when we were living in Kansas City, I should say that after I graduated, I moved home for a bit and then moved to Kansas City.
Yeah.
I had friends, Lauren and I had friends that were in the accounting world, CPAs, who mostly worked for public firms, as it's called, versus working for, say, private industry. And I just talked to them and said, tell me what it's like doing what you do. And I liked what I heard. I knew I needed to go back to get those accounting hours to sit for the exam. So I did that. And so really it was just about talking to people who were currently, in that industry or in that space, and understanding what they were doing. And that piqued my interest as to, maybe accounting is for me. Turns out it is. But I just didn't know that until about a year and a half after I graduated college.
Well, that's awesome. I gotta say, with Kansas, I'm not too familiar with well-renowned like accounting program schools. Is Kansas very well-renowned? Because I'm thinking about the aspect of, do you have to go to a specific school to, I guess, tap into different markets, whether that's like the Wall Street market, like, oh, you've gone to Harvard or something like that, so you have like a better disparity? Or do you find that you can kind of go to any school that has an accounting major and still kind of learn the same material?
So to answer your question, I don't know where KU ranks, in the country or the world. It's my personal opinion that it really doesn't matter where you go to school. And this doesn't always work out this way, but as long as you have the drive and you're intelligent, or you, at least understand and have a willingness to learn, then it doesn't matter where you go to school, or necessarily where you end up. It's just about what you do when you get there. When you're hired, what do you do after that?
Yeah.
I think that in part determines your success.
Yeah, because that's kind of what I believe as well. And that's kind of where I was going with that question, is just because you may go to some like a Harvard or Yale or something like that doesn't mean you have like the people skills, or like you may have like critical thinking aspects, especially with the kind of coursework they do there. But the people skills, I think, goes a much longer way. And would you say that's one of the biggest things that is a part of the accounting world, is being able to interact with others on like a business level, personal level? Because you have to build relationships. Like, what would you say are some like even other characteristics that you would say you learned a lot in school and outside?
So that's an interesting question. I would say that other than the basics, like what's a debit, what's a credit,
Yeah.
um, what I know now, you can't know. College can't teach you everything. Again, I
Hmm.
think that when you graduate college, you hopefully have a very good base in your brain about theory.
Yeah.
Then the challenge is putting that stuff into practice, right? So right now I'm helping a kid who just graduated college, and this was the same for me, and it's the same for a lot of people. When you're talking about different concepts, and sometimes you like to challenge people and say, "Hey, here's a tax return. I'm going to ask you to prepare. It's complex, or it's you know way beyond what your experience level is, but I'm going to challenge you on it. I'm going to be here. You can ask me questions, but I want you to challenge it." A lot of times you get deer in the headlights. Um, and I remember that. I remember thinking, this is really the career for me because I'm involved in something that's very, very difficult. One other thing that college doesn't teach you is that things are messier in the real world.
Hmm.
Clients might provide, you know, incomplete information, stuff like
Oh,
that.
do they really? Oh.
Oh yeah. Sorry to burst your bubble there, Drew, but yes, they do. Um, and maybe their books are a mess, what they're keeping if they're a business. But back to what you asked about people skills and that kind of thing. So as you progress up the ladder and you have more client interaction, that is very important, believe it or not. A lot of times people will say to me, "Oh, you just deal with numbers." And yeah, when you first begin, you do, because you're pretty much preparing returns, or a lot of the stuff probably isn't relevant anymore because of technology, but maybe you were entering in something called the trial balance, which is the combined balance sheet and income statement for a client. Maybe you're inputting the W-2s, brokerage statements, that kind of thing. A lot of that is you don't have to do anymore necessarily because of technology, but that was something that you did, or at least I did way back when in the dark times. When I started, tax prep software was kind of in its infancy, right? It was DOS based. If you're familiar with what that
I'm not
is,
familiar with that is. What is that?
DOS is like that was like one of the original operating systems for PCs
Okay.
before what is it called? Well, before what we now see as your operating interface, if you will.
Yeah.
More of a Windows based.
Hmm.
Um, DOS was not a lot of graphics involved and that kind of thing. Not a lot of dragging and dropping, all that kind of thing. So, um, but you do have to have people skills as you get further up. I mean, there are in my firm, the hierarchy in the tax department goes: you have staff, you have senior staff, you have managers, senior managers, then partner. Now, if we see a staff or a senior staff that shows that kind of aptitude where they, understand what they're doing, and they ask, "Hey, I want to talk to clients," we'll say, "Okay, let's start you out slow, and let's have you call a client and ask for missing information, or maybe if you have a question." And but it is very important to connect with your clients. They're not just a client number, if you will. They're not just a source of revenue. They're people like you are. And, you know, they sometimes, I used to joke that I think I should have graduated, or they should require accountants to graduate with a minor in psychology, because sometimes, you know, people will unload on you, if you will.
Oh yeah.
Just a quick example. Sorry, my dogs are barking.
All good.
Um, if I had a client that was getting divorced, and he shared some stuff with me, personal information that I was thinking to myself, again, when I was in college, I would have never thought that a client would be saying these things to me. I won't repeat what he said, but let's just say that it's very, very personal stuff that you would normally not share with someone, that maybe you don't know that well, or you wouldn't share with your accountant, let's say. I don't know. But so part of me was like, well, this is awkward. And then part of me was like, I must have made an impression on this guy. He must really trust me,
Yeah, you're in
which is
that
very
circle of
important.
trust.
They throw around this word trusted advisor, and it's true. So I thought, this guy must really trust me if he's telling me this stuff. Again, things that you would never generally not talk about to just people that you maybe don't know that well, right? So and the other thing about people skills, so what I like to talk about with our firm is that, well, number one, the tax law is voluminous. I don't know if this is the case anymore. It's probably higher, but they used to say you could stack all of the tax law if it was in a book form end to end, and might reach the ceiling. Now you probably, with all the other tax bills that have been passed, you probably have two stacks. I mean, you
Oh my
can't know
goodness.
everything. You can't know everything. And one of the best things you can say to a client is, if they ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, the best thing you can say to them is, I don't know the answer to that question. But in my case, with my firm, it's like, I'll know someone that does. And so I'll say, hey, I don't know the answer to that question, but I know someone that does, and we'll get an answer for you. I mean, providing that value, that's what, we do, because I'm not just a person that prepares tax returns. I didn't have to go through everything I've gone through to do that,
Yeah.
And so I'd like to believe that I provide analysis and consulting and some sort of peace of mind other than, hey, here's a return I just prepared for you. So it is very important to be able to connect with the client. Just even like small things. Like if I know I got a client he's turning 40 on Saturday, and I'll call him and give him some grief about it, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of thing is, they appreciate that. Oh, he just had a kid. How's he or she doing? I had a client that was he's buying a Honda store down in a small town in Oklahoma, and I was talking to him about something before I had found out from one of his controllers that his son had broke his hand. It was in the in the doctor's office. I was like, hey, I heard about your kid. How's he doing? And
Yeah.
then I can share, my son used to break bones all the time. He was kind of a daredevil when he was a kid, blah, blah, stuff like that, and I'm being sincere with the client. I do care about them. And
Because it
so if
keeps
you
them
could,
coming back too, because
it,
it's that mutual trust. And you brought up that
yep.
really good point earlier on when you talked about how, hey, I may not have this answer for you, but I know there's someone that does. So you're staying honest with them as well.
Yeah.
And would you say that's also really important for someone really early on in their career? Because they will not have the answers to everything for sure. And I don't think anyone will, but saying, hey, I will go find that answer for you just to try and build up maybe even responsibility of, oh, hey, I got to do this for someone else. I can't just, oh, here's a piece of paper. All right, get out of my face kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the other thing, you bring up a good point, because not only should you be honest with your external clients, but you should be honest with your internal clients and coworkers, right? So the same thing applies. I might have a staff person come in my office and ask me a question. I'll say, you know what? Yeah, good question. I don't know the answer. But let's find out. I know who to call, or at least I know who to start with. I think sometimes the staff, and I know I felt this way too. They think that because at this point I'm at least 20 years older, even 30. No, at least 30 years older than a lot of the staff we hire, in most cases. And so they probably look at a lot of us, manager on up, and think that oh, we know everything. And I'm always will say, no, again, that's just not possible,
Yeah.
and hopefully what that does is it shows them, oh, okay, I don't have to know everything. But like you mentioned, where you got to be honest. If you don't know something, you got to say you don't know it. I've never lost a client because I didn't know something. But I have, in my younger days, irritated clients no end by not saying that, but then trying to and and huh and my way through an answer. And most of the time the client is like, I know you don't know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
that's not where you want to be, um,
The
yeah.
client interface that I even get, so I work a GIS job, and so it's all consulting. So I work with field crews and everyone all the time. and something might not work. And regardless if it was your fault or like someone else's fault, even just apologizing to them just goes a long way, because it just
Agreed.
de-escalates so much.
Yeah.
I I remember being on a call with a field crew person, and there was an update that was pushed to this map, and they were so mad because they spent all these hours surveying, and then it changed, and they're just dropping F-bombs left to right. I was like, oh no. And so, but just like even apologizing goes a long way.
Yep.
And for yourself, especially at a partner level, like you talked about how there's staffs and then there's managers, senior managers, and then partners. It makes it even more important as a leadership skill to do that. And I was wondering, because it sounds like you deal with a lot of like the tax return stuff, you mentioned the both public and private side. You're more on the public side. Is it just those two categories of the accounting world? And if so, like, can you explain a little bit more about both of them?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say that as far as the profession goes, you're doing one of two things. You're either working for a public firm, which means working in public. So just as we're talking and using jargon here, if you work for a private company, then you either work in private or in industry. So like locally here, if you work for Williams Companies, which is an oil and gas producer, driller, whatnot, if you're an accountant over there, they are a publicly traded company. It's a little confusing, but that is private industry. Okay. They don't, I am a certified public accountant. Now there may be a CPA working for Williams, but that particular CPA, he or she does not serve the public, whereas that's what I do. I serve the
Gotcha.
public. Those are my clients, right?
Yeah.
Now you could say, well, maybe I have this consulting firm or this or that, whatever it might be. It's generally two categories, the two categories, if you will.
Are you
Public,
consulting yourself too with having customers?
I do. So I do consulting. Now to back up for a bit, yeah, my specialty is tax. And our firm, we have a number of different, specialties that you can go into. But I've always done tax. That's where I started out for the past 30 years. That's what I've done. But my that area does also lend itself to consulting. So yeah, I would say anytime a client calls me and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a new business, or I think I'm going to set up a warehouse in this state," then that becomes business consulting.
Yeah.
So I have to code my time and I charge by the hour, and so I've got to figure out what do I charge that to. And typically if I'm having a conversation with a client about something like that that's not the tax return, let's say, then it is going to be some sort of consulting.
Which is super intriguing that you can kind of blend into multiple spaces. Like,
Sure.
especially if you work with a client at first on the tax stuff, then they come back to you about a different aspect, and then you work with them on that. But then you're your own consultant in a sense, which is outside the business. Like that, it's cool. But then also, do you have to like set up an S corp or anything for yourself, or like an LLC, or are you still part of just the company? Like when other people come to you about different stuff.
Yeah, first of all, that's the first time anyone said that my profession is cool, so I appreciate that. But no, so again, you asked this is an interesting question. So I am a partner of Eide Bailey. That means when I signed, that part of the partnership agreement, in the partnership agreement, it says that I cannot have any business dealings outside of the firm. So in other words,
Okay.
I cannot like set up Scott Zeligson Consulting Incorporated, an S corp, let's
Yeah. Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
and have that out there. I would get kicked out of the partnership if I did that. So all of what I'm saying is within the firm.
Gotcha.
In,
Okay.
in
Cool.
fact, in fact, um, you meet people outside the firm; they're not clients. Oh, you're a CPA. Hey, I got a tax question for you. I've got to be very, very careful, when I answer that question. Generally, it is, or I should say, usually the question is not that involved. Um, but I usually have to respond in a couple different manners. I'll say, one, make sure you consult with whoever is preparing your taxes, and I'll say, two, this is free advice, you know how much that's worth,
Mm-hmm.
and then three, I'll say, look, I don't know your full story. It's none of my business because you're not a client. So here's sort of the general sense or the general answer to what you are asking, the question you're asking me. Or I might say, like I said before, I don't know the answer to that question.
Why do I feel like that happens more often than not? Like someone might overhear you talking about what you do and they're like, hey, I just got a question about this.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, the general population, and this makes complete sense because they don't do this for a living, don't really know or understand, or maybe they don't even care about those complexities, and maybe this is somebody, well, here's a perfect example. So last year we had someone come in and paint the interior of our home.
Yeah.
So he was asking me what I did, and I think I was working from home that day, and I said, hey, I'm a CPA, and oh, our CPA is retiring, and I think we'd like to go with you. And I'm like, you don't even know me, first of all. I'm glad I can give you that good first impression, but you don't know me. You don't know our firm, and I can tell you right now, we're too big for you. Because here's the, and I didn't say it that way, but what I said was, look, here's the minimum that I got to charge you. And it was, I don't know, 10 times what he was being charged at his other firm. And he was like,
His
oh,
eyes grow wide. He's like, what the?
yeah. And so I said, but you know what? I know some, because I work with a lot of smaller practitioners around town that I can refer people to, and then they can refer, if they find someone that's too big for them, they might refer them to me. But what it comes down to is what's the right fit, and I don't want, like the guy, like the painter. I don't want to, have him as a client and then say, hey, I got to charge you this fee that you may not afford, but you asked to be my client. That's your fault. No, I'm not going to do that, right? So, and then he was asking me questions about, deductions, and I had to give him the kind of that standard answer. Because unfortunately, in this day, well, not in this day and age, it's been going on for a while. People will sue you for looking at them wrong, right? So you just have to be very
Yeah.
careful about what you say. I mean, even to clients currently, like right now, you had the tax law that was passed on July 4th, and there are things that we know, and there are things that we need additional guidance on, and so you know we kind of had an edict come out with, hey, here's how you need to respond to clients, because I've got clients calling me saying, what about this, what about that. And again, sometimes I can say, well, we know exactly how this is going to work. This starts in 25, so for 24 it's same as normal, as usual.
Mm-hmm.
But what, for this deal over here you're talking about, which has potential saving you a ton of money, we have to wait for the Treasury Department and the IRS to issue what's called regulations.
Yeah.
So you got the tax code up here, which is, it kind of tells you how to do things. Then you have regulations, which breaks things down further, gives examples, that sort of stuff, more procedural guidance, if you will. And we do not have that yet. And it's almost been a month, and that is typical,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of hurry up and wait right now, unfortunately. And it's just, again, it comes down to making sure I can explain that to clients, that I hear you, and yeah, I want you to take advantage of this deduction as fast as you can, but if you want to do it correctly, then we have to wait for guidance. So,
And I love to kind of get more into, I guess, the tax world with you. So you make a purchase, you get taxed on that purchase, that goes to the government. But how do just taxes work in general? Like for people because it's such a big world, and you said if you stack a certain amount of papers, it goes all the way to ceiling.
mm-hmm.
But like that's my general understanding of taxes in general, especially pretty much fresh out of college.
Sure.
Just exposed to I like worked a few jobs, so I had to fill out a W-2 or a W-4 or whatever it is, and you get a tax return on that. But if there's so much more to it, can you just describe a little bit more of like what to the general people, and then like maybe even just like a business as a whole?
Sure. So we may have to tack on another 3 hours of this podcast if you want me to thoroughly explain this. No.
Let's do it.
So what you described, you said you purchase something and it gets taxed, so that's sales tax, right?
Yeah.
And with that, the way that works is, you go to, um, I don't know, a store, and you go to a grocery store. I don't know if North Carolina taxes, if they tax groceries, but
Mhm.
say you go to a grocery store and you buy $100 worth of groceries, and you got to pay $8 worth of sales tax, let's say. Um, you got like state, city, county portions of that, and the grocery store collects that $8 and then remits it to the different, taxing authorities, and that goes to pay for roads, police, firemen, ambulance, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So in a general sense, if we're talking federal tax, it works similarly for state. Um, you know, our government, or the country, United States, we have a government, and the government runs, and the government doesn't sell anything necessarily. So they have to collect money somehow in order to fund all these different programs. The military, Social Security, you name it. There's just
Yeah.
to name a few. So the way that works is there's a number of different taxes, and probably the most, I'll use the word popular, but that's probably not true. um, is your federal income tax, right? And so what happens is, say for personal purposes, um, so let's use you as an example, Drew. Uh, you're right. You filled out a W-4 that tells your company how to withhold taxes on your W-2, which is your wages.
Mhm.
I'm assuming you get paid a wage
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
weekly, biweekly, monthly, whatever it might be. So at the end of the year, you get what's called a W-2. That reports how much money you made. It reports how much tax was withheld, federal, state, something called FICA and Medicare. Um, and then you file your tax return, and say all you have is your W-2. So you file your return, um, and say you had $10,000 of tax withheld, but you owe $9,000, so you get a refund of $1,000.
Mm.
Flip that. Let's say that you had $9,000 withheld, but you owe 10,000, so you owe $1,000. And again,
Oh, so it can
everyone,
go both ways.
yeah, it depends, on how much, how much your income is versus how much tax you had withheld or paid in from, uh, you know, either your wages, how much tax you had withheld from your wages versus, if you're paying what's called estimated taxes, how much you've actually paid in. So, again, the bottom line is what's happening is we have to file these returns every year by April 15th or October 15th if you have an extension. And then all that money funnels into the government, and then the government uses that money to um, fund all these different programs. Um, that's a very, very simple, let's say,
Yeah.
non-confusing, hopefully, way of explaining it. It's a
No, but I
lot
think
more
that's really
complex than
important.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but it's important to get a general sense because,
Yep.
for accounting or finance people, this is basic 101 type things. But
Yep.
obviously, what you're exposed to is very much more convoluted. But I'd say definitely a good amount of my friends don't understand that aspect, and let alone do I understand, like, why do you get taxed more and then you get a tax return back on that? I don't know how like that works. Like there's
Right.
all these different kind of things. And it's brought up a different conversation of in previous episodes of should there be a financial class that everyone or accounting class that everyone should take at school and high school or college just to give people a basic 101 understanding and even just like how to budget properly. And I was curious to see what your thoughts were on that just because there is so much to it.
Oh, 100% yes. Look, funny thing. I remember, you know, my parents dropped me off in Lawrence, Kansas, and then a month and a half later, they came up for Parents Weekend, and I hadn't balanced my checkbook, so
Mm.
I didn't know how to do any of that. I remember my parents sitting with me at a table, showing me how to balance my checkbook, So I didn't know any of that. And you're right. Like when I graduated and moved to Kansas City, I think I started out doing kind of temporary work. Then I worked for a mortgage banking firm. Then I worked for this bank, and then I worked for a CPA firm. But yeah, just seeing like, okay, here's my wages, and like you said, so say you're before deductions, what they call gross wage is like, say you get paid monthly, and say your gross wage is 10 grand, but say you're netting 5 grand because you got all these taxes that are taken out, 2 of which are FICA and Medicare, which are payroll taxes, which fund Social Security. Well, you don't see that until you retire,
Yeah.
and if you're 22 years old, you're like, I'm not going to retire till I'm 60 something. What in the world? Like, what is this? But let me real quickly. So yeah, 100% yes, that should be, people need to understand it. It would help everyone out quite a bit if people understood that.
Yeah.
But let me go back real quick because you had another question I wanted, just as far as business tax goes.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different ways this can happen. A couple different business types, if you will. So tax is going to be paid at one of 2 levels. So if you are something that's called a C corporation, regular C corp, where all the income is at the what they call the entity level. You got XYZ Inc., whatever that might be.
Yeah.
XYZ Inc. pays tax at XYZ at the XYZ's level. The owners don't pay that tax. XYZ makes $1 million. XYZ is gonna be paying 210 grand on that, income, because the tax rate for corporations is 21%. Hopefully I got that math correctly. I like to joke that I'm not good with numbers. I need to have a calculator out there, and I did that on the fly. So hopefully I did that right.
I think that's right.
I think it is too. So then you get into pass-throughs. You mentioned LLCs, you mentioned S corporations. So interestingly enough, an LLC can be taxed like you're self-employed. It can be taxed like a partnership. It can be taxed like an S corporation. It could even be taxed like a C corporation. LLCs are very, very flexible. But let's talk about an LLC that is taxed like a partnership. So, and just like an S corporation, those are called pass-through entities, meaning if in my previous example, if XYZ LLC or XYZ Inc. S corporation makes $1 million, and XYZ has 2 members if it's an LLC, or owners or shareholders if it's an S corporation, and they're 50-50, then that $1 million gets passed through equally to shareholder 1, shareholder 2, or member 1 or member 2. And then that tax, that $500,000, is then taxed on the owner's tax returns. So
Okay.
then you're back to what we were saying before. So in this case, this example, say owner 1 has income from the S corporation or LLC that's taxed like a partnership of $500,000. I don't know, let's say they owe 200 grand. That math might not be right, but say they owe $200,000. Now in this situation, more likely than not, and I don't want to get down into the weeds, just
it's all good.
They may if they're an S corporation, they have to be paid a wage. So maybe they've got some withholding from their wages, and then they would have to pay an estimated tax payments. Those are due April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and then January 15th of the following year. Welcome to Let's Be Confused by What the Government Wants Us to Do. Trust me. I have to go over that with clients all the time, even my most savvy clients. Why is this? It's just, that's what the government wants us to do. Don't question it. So, as far as, again, if they owe 200 grand, then that tax is going to be covered partly by their, say, withholding from wages, and partly by the estimated taxes that they're paying in. So that's how that works. So again, you've got someone who say just has a W-2, and is not a member or shareholder in a pass-through entity like we talked about, their tax situation may be as complicated as that person who has, an ownership in a business, because
Wow.
it
Yeah.
comes in all shapes and sizes, and there could be a lot of things going on, which is part of the reason why they need us, because we can interpret and help them, right? My job, among other things, is to help my clients save as much money as possible, and just make sure, well, maybe not make sure, but to help them see that they're spending their money as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answered your
No,
question,
it,
right?
it definitely does. And I can see why that stack of papers is just so big when it comes to this stuff.
Before I got on the phone with you, I was on a hour and a half continuing ed uh, seminar with our firm, an internal one. I have to have 40 hours a year of continuing ed to keep my license.
Is
Two
that your
two
CPA
hours.
license?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And all that's handled at the state level. So I'm actually licensed to practice in Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma, which sounds cooler than it is. Because when I was living and I always lived on the Kansas side when I was in Kansas City, in a suburb called Overland Park. But when you're living in Kansas City, you are most likely going to service clients on both sides of the border, if you will. So wherever you get certified. So I was working in Missouri at the time, so I took the CPA exam in Missouri, and then once I passed, turned around and got reciprocity, as it's called, in Kansas. So then when I moved back to Oklahoma, I had to get reciprocity in Oklahoma. So, it sounds cool.
Hmm.
I'm licensed to practice in 3 states, but, that's just how my career trajectory was, right?
You
So,
only need 40 hours for just to hold your CPA, and that'll operate through all 3 states.
yeah, and I think in both Kansas and Missouri, as long as I keep up, you're right, because as long as I keep up my license here, they will call that good for their states. And I probably could let my Kansas license lapse because I don't necessarily use it that much. I actually, funny thing, I do have clients in Kansas now, so maybe I shouldn't do that. But it's let's just say this. This is a little bit off topic, but with the advent of the internet, um, and something called SALT, state and local taxation, that's a whole other thing, or consultancy world, where if you have clients that have uh, business in multiple states, they've got to make sure they're filing in most, if they have a requirement. And most of the time now with the internet, uh, if you could, some states are like, if you make one sale, if you never set foot in our state, but you make one online sale to someone in our state, you have to file. You may not notice this, but you might notice it now after I say this. But if you order something online, miraculously, wherever you order it from, you'll see that they've actually recorded sales tax in your state. And so you order something out and it gets shipped from California,
Yeah.
they're going to have North Carolina state sales tax withheld from that, because they have to.
Wow.
Didn't used to be that, and it used to be something called physical presence, but whereas you have to actually travel into that state. Now, though, with the internet, that's not the case anymore. So, because I think states, they felt they were losing a lot of money with these non-brick and mortar, places like Amazon is the most used
Because
example.
that's what I think of as soon
Yeah,
as you said that with
yeah,
internet-based purchasing.
yeah. Even though Amazon does have certain brick and mortar stores in certain cities now, but yes, something like that. I mean, I remember ordering from like Supreme or something like that, right? Where you'll see, how do they know what the Oklahoma sales are? But okay, yeah, I know how they know that, right?
Yeah.
Or some of these other places, like I just remember that one came to mind, but you'll see it just about anywhere, and because they're required to do it, they have to, and the states have no problem coming after you and saying, we know you're selling in our state, and you didn't collect sales tax, you didn't file a tax return, you better do it, right? So yeah, that's why we keep coming back to this concept that it's so complicated. It is,
Mm. Because how's your
Yeah.
view changed as you moved up in the ranks to become a partner of just everything in the accounting world as a whole? Because it just
Well,
seems like it gets more convoluted as you go on, because I'm assuming as a staffer, you're not necessarily working with clients directly, but you're getting the work passed down from your senior management of, hey, I'm going to need this whenever. Can you do that for me? But then as you move up, you're one-on-ones with the client, you're trying to understand their needs, and then you have to figure out the information of how it works, whether that's in your state, otherwhere, like if they're selling a product to
yeah.
nationwide, like you said.
Yeah. So how does my how have my feelings or yeah, we some of us who are contemporaries, let's say, or around the same age, always kind of joke that we're kind of old and cynical, and we but we have to and you kind of get jaded. Like I look sometimes I look at our federal government and I'm like, guys, come on, work for everybody. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then I have to, because again, like new tax law. Um, so sometimes they pass a law, and you're looking at the law, you're going, who did this? Somebody was drunk when they wrote this, and they passed it, because this makes no sense. This is going to be very difficult to implement, and only very large businesses are going to have the capacity to do it. And so what'll happen is we can actually, so the group that represents the CPA profession, whether you're public or private, in the world and to Washington, is called the American Institute of CPAs, or the AICPA. So again, real world example, the current bill that's just passed, um, they people are looking through it, they're analyzing it, and even our firm, like we have a guy that resides in DC, the DC area, and
Mm.
we will, you know, throw things at him and say, hey, this part of the bill doesn't make any sense. We might get a consensus together and say we think that it should be this, not this. They need to change it, and they can do that by passing what's called a technical corrections uh, act or bill. And so what's happening right now, again, for the past month, is people are looking at the bill, digesting it, and then giving suggestions to whomever their liaison is. Sometimes it's directly to their congressperson. Sometimes it's to either the AICPA or a lot of these large firms like us have people in DC, that they can say, hey, you need to tell this congressperson's assistant or staffer that who's a member of the some tax writing committee, House Ways and Means Committee, or the Senate Finance Committee, that this makes no sense. This is not logical. It needs to be changed. Here's our proposal. So
I
there's
didn't even
things like
realize
like
that
that.
you guys could do that,
Oh yeah,
where I'm sure you guys even have like the word for even the smaller firms that may not have people in DC. You guys are like, let's just get some technical correction to this,
yeah,
because it creates less gray space involved. And I'm
yeah,
sure that can go a long way, because I would never have thought that there was that correction aspect. So to the bill that was just passed, you guys
yeah,
can correct some of the technical writing. That's so interesting to hear
yeah.
about.
Well, let me say this: we can propose it. It doesn't necessarily mean Congress will look at it and go, yeah, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
sometimes and honestly, sometimes it's about public outcry. Sometimes it just depends. And there's, again, I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to get, but I've got one example in particular that was pretty nasty that got fixed on the new bill. Um, but yeah, it just, there's a lot of interaction, can be a lot of interaction, and um, and while this bill, what it did was it shored up things that had existed since 2017. There are some different nuances to it now that we need to really look at and make sure that we understand.
Yeah.
And that clients will be calling, they already are, and so you just have to make sure you understand it to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
But I don't know
And
if I answered your question. You were asking me about kind of how my attitude has changed, or
yeah, like
is
you
that?
mentioned that this example of how there might be some technical correction that you guys have to work through to understand more of, and you're on the higher scale of it. So it's all about processing information.
Mhm.
I guess just how has it even changed in more of like, oh, I didn't know that accounting applied to this business or this formatting of something.
Right.
And maybe it goes outside of just the tax code itself, because I know that's what you specialize in, but I didn't know how it changed even that realm of things.
Yeah. So, obviously you can understand, that when you're first starting out, and you said it, you're basically kind of heads down working on preparing tax returns, right? And then, you want to be able to develop these skills, issue recognition. You see something on a tax return. I mean, I had one of our senior staff, she was preparing a dealership tax return. And one of the things we tell people, very, very easy thing to do, take a look at the prior year and the current year, you know, balance sheet and income statement, and look at fluctuations, look at changes. So she was looking at life insurance expense, and it tripled from year one to year two. And she told me about it, and I said, look, we have people in our firm that can do this analysis, and then can, if it makes sense, suggest a better policy. And that's exactly what we did. We were able to save. I don't remember how much we saved the client, but I want to say it was a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
And all that did was she was just aware, and that's, again, it's all about that analysis, because we're not just doing data entry. We're trying to help our clients. And so, as you start out, you're like thinking, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm trying to, how do I learn all this stuff, and did I choose the right profession? And as you start kind of climbing up the ladder, you're like, well, where do I want to be? Like, I knew I wanted to be a partner as soon as I was hired, right? And so, I hopefully, geared all of what I did to get to that point. And
Those thoughts
again,
though are so real. What you're
yeah,
saying, like, I'm trying to learn a lot. Like, is this the right thing for me?
right,
Because, oh man, like, just starting out with my job, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
right. We
But
all
now
do.
that I've been here for over a year, I'm understanding more and more aspects. I'm like, oh, like, this is nice. I'm
Yeah,
kind of understanding something.
yeah. Well, and so the other thing I would say, that I think one of the main changes also is people management, right?
Yeah.
So our firm is, so if you looked at the structure of our local office, I mean, I'm not even at the top, right? We've got um, a department head, and then we have something that's called a market leader, who is kind of the de facto head of the Tulsa office. And then we have a regional head who's above everyone else. So, I don't know how. My always hope and is that the staff look at me as someone who they can come to if they have questions, who is fair, who's not a jerk. Because coming up, I worked for plenty of partners who just thought they were better than you, and I thought, I'm not. That's not who I'm going to be.
They have the title, you know?
Yeah, I'm not going to scream and yell at somebody when they make a mistake. I'm going to say, look, let's look and see what you did and figure out how to fix that, right? And so you don't make it again. And maybe you didn't understand something. Okay, maybe I didn't explain it to you properly. Okay, that's on me. I need to help you with that. So people management becomes paramount, because you want to keep the people who are really good,
Yeah.
and the people that aren't so great, you really got to make sure you can help them. And sometimes maybe people think they're cut out for public accounting, but they're not. The hours can get pretty long during the first part of the year, and we're coming up on what we call the second busy season, the second tax season, where we're coming up on extension time. And from now until October 15th, it's going to be pretty darn busy.
Yeah.
And and so, so for me, I got to manage my clients, their expectations. I got to manage, anywhere from senior managers all the way down to staff, um, just because, the other thing is training up your replacement, right? So um, I have mandatory forced retirement at 65, which is totally fine, because I can tell you that in a smaller firm, partners would quote unquote retire, but they would keep coming to the office, and then your chances of moving up were pretty much nil. Now it's like, yeah, we're done, finished in at 65. And that doesn't mean I don't have to stop working. I mean, that just means that I'm not a partner in Eide Bailly anymore. I'm because we got to make room for other people. So,
Yeah.
you're training people, you're managing them, you're helping them out, or however you want to say it. And then you got your clients who you're managing their expectations, answering their questions, helping them with whatever it is they might need help with, whether it's as this is as simple, but as simple as preparing a tax return versus um, they're going to merge, or they're going to get bought out by this public or private equity firm, and you've got to deal with that, and so which I have that going on right now too. So you know sometimes you get in and I get to the office around between 7:30, and then you turn around and it's like 3 o'clock. What just happened,
Yeah.
and those the days where you're just busy, 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 and it's the time's flying by. It can be frustrating, but it also be fun. Um, because I'd rather be busy than not, right? But then the other thing is you have to make sure that you do take time off, right? Um, Partners in our firm have to take a 6 week sabbatical once they reach 5 years of being a partner. So I just recently did that. Wasn't looking forward to it, but once I got in there, it was good. And I actually halfway through ended up, we bought new phones. And so they cut you off from your email. Like I had no access to email.
Oh,
Then when
they like totally cut
oh
you
yeah,
off. Like the business, like you'll get a pop up that says, "Sorry, no, you still got X amount of time left."
Um, that's funny. Like I did kind of look at my email once, and it said something about you're locked out or something like that.
Nice.
Um, but I'll tell you, we ended up getting a new phone about halfway through, and so I just use regular Outlook, but it's got to be secure, and there's some things I have to go through to put it on my phone. So that went away, and I was like, huh. It's not even bothering me that the app's not even on my phone. So, I was
Nice.
able to actually step away and relax, and just to make sure that I did, recharge. And what that does is it helps people that you work with who are managers, senior managers, to really step up and help kind of service the client and be in front of them. Um, so it's good for everybody.
Yeah, like I
Really.
got a few things to that is so I love my boss. Obviously, this is my first job outside of college, and it's been really nice having my boss. And you bring up the fact that you want to train your replacement. And obviously, I'm not saying I'm my boss replacement by any means, but he definitely trains people to understand what's going on, and he's very transparent with them about what's happening at a higher level and even lower level.
Hmm.
And that's something that I appreciate the most that he does. And you mentioned how, it takes other people to step up. Like that's a big thing when you take 6 weeks off. Like people have to step up because a lot can happen in that amount of time.
Right.
And I was
Yep.
just wondering, like, what does it take to become a partner of a firm? You mentioned that people have to mandatory retire at 65, but like they can do something else. Was that what happened with you where someone retired and you got the position? And also, what does it mean to be a partner?
So how did I get the position? I would like to think it was through persistence and then my
Yeah.
merits,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so I mean and since like I told you before, I've wanted to be a partner since the day I got hired, not even understanding and knowing what that means.
Mhm.
um, and so I remember several years before I was promoted, I went to the current again, department head who I'd known for 20 years, and I said, Tom, you know it's time to put your money on the table here. I want to be a partner. And he's like, all right, let's talk about this. And so our old CEO, old managing partner, used to say, um, it's time and opportunity is what also goes into it. So there was a partner that was retiring, and basically kind of cut and dried. I kind of took his place. Now, in our firm, the board has to vote on you, and the other current partners who know you have to show that, hey, look, this guy or this gal's got the stuff to become a partner. So part of that is you have to have what's called a book of business. You have to have your own clients. So I had my own book, people that I'd recruited and brought in, and then that got combined with the existing book of this current partner that retired. So part of one of the things you have to become a partner is you got to have a book of business. clients that you service. The other thing you have to have is, this technical know-how. Even though I said earlier that I don't know everything, you still have to, you have to show by example or exhibit the fact that you do understand, maybe more than the basics, if you will. So that's really how that works. You could go out and be, what they call a rainmaker and bring in all this business, and then if you have enough to support yourself, that they can make you a partner right away, right?
Hmm.
For me, it was sort of a combination. So right time, right place. Plus, I had my own book. Plus, I demanded it, right? No, or asked. And so, what does it mean to be a partner? Well, in a literal sense, it means you're a part owner of a business. Um, and you are the person that signs a tax return or signs an audit, or you're sort of you're the last stop. You're the client contact, you're the mentor, to a younger staff. You're a colleague and a friend to all those people and to your fellow partners. So I mean, in a nutshell, that's what it means to me to be a partner. And it's funny. So our firm's based in Fargo, North Dakota. So it's Midwest, very humble. And so, look, depending on where you look online, we're anywhere from 17 to 14, ranking within the firm. I'm pretty proud of that. But I got to temper myself, so I'm not going to walk around when people ask me what I do. I'm a partner of a CPA firm. That's how I'll say it. I'm not going to, I try not to like put on airs or be arrogant, if you will. Because one, that doesn't help. And I don't know if a lot of
Yeah.
people appreciate that. And I'm not at the top of the chain anyway. So, what's it matter, I guess. But, it's important to be humble. And like I said, the first CPA firm I ever worked for, the managing partner, this was back in the days where being informal meant wearing a blazer and like khakis you could throw in the wash instead of dry clean. You know what I mean? And so, working in Kansas City, they're like, hey, if it's cold, you can wear a sweater, but you had to dress up. Nowadays, it depends on the office, but our office is pretty casual. I mean, I usually wear, I don't wear like a t-shirt and shorts to the office, but I'll wear sneakers
Yeah.
and I'll wear, pants that I can throw in the wash, but and then wear, like a golf shirt, or usually in the winter time, I'll wear, a sweater, pullover, something like that. Um, not a tie, not anymore, not a suit. Um, there are occasions where you might have to do it, but nowadays it's really the exception, rather than the norm. But you know, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It's
But
all good. All good.
what I mean, I just as far as what it means for me to be a partner, I mean that's exactly what I said. It's just there's pride in knowing you're part of this big firm and that we help clients out, and we've got offices as far east as Ohio and as far west as California, and um
Do you get decision making in that aspect where,
so
like, if there's something that comes up, like the partners talk about it and
mhm,
whether they want to implement it or not?
I do to a certain degree. um Smaller firm, I would have a lot more decision making process. So we have what's called firm admin, and then we have a board. And the board will generally make, I mean, I participate in that. We elect our board members every year, and they will make decisions on our behalf. Sometimes, depending on what the particular decision is and what our partnership agreement says, we all might have to vote on certain things. Like, say, for example, we were going to merge in some large CPA firm. Um, we might have to vote on that. If it's a tiny office, maybe not. So there's certain things, and locally, I might have more decision making process or participation, but sometimes it's just department heads that get together and figure that out. So
Gotcha.
So there's some, but not as much. And I trust my partners. I trust the people on the board, so I can sleep well at night knowing that they're making these decisions in not just in mine, but in everyone's best interest.
Gotcha. So, awesome. Yeah. And sorry the way the one question was phrased. I was more curious, like how you got into it. Like if there's only a certain amount of partners, then you can, and one retires, then you can get in. So I guess it wasn't phrased properly, but that's the way I was kind of going with it. And then
to answer your question, that is part of it too. Yes.
Oh, really? Yeah. So there's only a certain amount of partners that can be there.
Yeah, and that has to do with just profits and something called leverage and
gotcha.
Meaning
I guess
that
not everyone can have like decision-making processes.
That is true. Now, like what I mentioned before, like say you're just this incredible rainmaker, you can bring in business. If you bring in enough business, regardless, then and you're showing that you can handle it and that you're growing it, then what you've done is create a position for yourself, and then it's very possible you could become a partner like that. So in other words, someone does not have to retire in that situation.
Gotcha.
Like in my situation, it was just, again, like time and opportunity, right place, right time, where I had a book, and then this other partner had a book that was retiring, and I was able to replace him. So
awesome. Well, Scott, I really do appreciate you doing the show today. It means a lot, and I know it will connect with a lot of people, especially learning more just about the accounting world as a whole, because it is, I would say, definitely a bigger profession that a lot of people choose, but maybe definitely not a lot of people understand. So I appreciate you shedding some light on it today, and thanks again for being on it.
It's my pleasure, Drew. And I'll leave you with this. I was going to make a joke about hopefully your ratings don't plummet because you've got like a guy talking about accounting for an hour. But I will say this. I think as the art or the fact of helping someone achieve something or some goal, that can be pretty exciting. And you do work with all sorts of people and all sorts of clients, and they've got exciting lives and exciting stories, and things can happen. There's something that there's this energy jolt that you get when you finish a deal. Like when I finished with this one dealership, client of mine who's buying another dealership, it's fun, and you get a great sense of accomplishment out of it. So while it might seem boring on the outside, on the inside, it's definitely not. But again, I appreciate you having me, and if people are clamoring for more, I'm happy to do a part 2.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Hey, you're welcome. Good talking to you.
Hey, everyone. Want to take a quick second and say thank you to whoever listened to the episode today. I really do appreciate it, and it means a lot. If you did like the episode, make sure to give it a like or 5-star rating depending on what platform you are listening to. And if you really want to support the show, check out our website or Patreon link below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next episode.